Hi, I'm John from toolsinaction.com. Today we're going to take a look at a couple tools from Kreg. And yes, that is the same company that makes the pocket hole jigs. They make quite a few other tools and just lesser known than their pocket hole jigs. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the Kreg Accu-Cut and Accu-Cut systems. Now, who might these be good for? The Accu-Cut and Accu-Cut are a great tool for someone who either doesn't have a table saw, has to rip down large sections of plywood, or someone who wants a track saw but doesn't want to spend huge dollars for one. Alright, what comes in each kit? Well, each kit, the Accu-Cut and Accu-Cut, both come with the same identical base plate. And this base plate is used for you to mount your circular saw on. And they claim it works with almost all left and right hand motor saws. Here I have two with the motors mounted on the left. I don't have any in the right, but basically if you've got a left hand motor, you mount it in one slot. If you have the right hand motor, you mount the blade in the other slot. And the one thing I did find out though is I also have a worm drive saw here, and the worm drive saw does not fit on this base. Not so much that the blade won't line up, but the key to keeping this thing mounted is this front lip on your saw. And I'll show you in a minute. This is what you need to mount this to the base plate. And it does not work with this worm drive saw. So that's probably why they left that out on the description. So that's the first thing you need to check. I would first check to see if you've got a decent sized base here, front lip to mount this to. If you have, then I'd say go ahead and look into the system further. If not, there's no need to. Alright, the Accu-Cut here. This tool allows you to run your guide down the side of a piece of plywood and get a cut up to 24 inches. So this will basically allow you to split a large piece of plywood in half lengthwise. Now if you want to go across it and you need to cut it in half, this won't get it. That's why I suggest putting these two units together. When I first saw this come out a couple years ago, I saw it and I'm like, gimmicky. I said it's going to be junk. And I gotta say, I couldn't be any more wrong. This thing is built very well, very sturdy. This aluminum track, very solid, no flex to it. A great little unit here. The plastic I thought was going to be cheap, and the way it's all reinforced in the back, it's very solid. I was completely wrong when I first saw this, and that's kind of the nice thing is getting these tools in your hands, is it allows you to dispel or verify what you're thinking in the first place. Now, the way I have this set up right now, if this becomes cumbersome for how you were running your table saw or your circular saw, I have it so I can grab it the right hand, run down one side of the board, and go with it. You can also take these two screws out, reverse this piece, and have this handle going the other way, because there is a guide on both sides, top and bottom. So depending on which way your hand orientation, left-handed, right-handed, how you want to set this up. I originally set it up the other way, tried it a couple times, and it's going to work better the other way. So I just switched it around. Now, this is pretty sweet how this base goes on here. On the bottom side of this saw base, it's basically like an oversized T-slot system. Fit that right into the track, right in the middle, and lock it down. And it's going to hold in place then. Very sturdy, super quick and easy to change. This works the same on both, well, it works the same, it works on this system this way, how it slides up and down. There's also, on both these systems, right up top here is a little guide with a red slash, and that tells you how many inches you are when you make your cut. Now, this is adjustable. You can slide this back and forth, and the best way to do this, to dial this right in, set your saw in place, make a cut on a junk piece of wood. Then measure that piece of wood. If it's reading 6 1/4 inches, then you need to take this little guide, push the button, slide it over so it reads 6 1/4, and then you'll be right on. After that, then you can just go by this guide and make your cuts. All right, I'm going to show you how to mount this saw. Very simple to do. On this base plate is a little stop block. It could be reversed around, and it fits on either side of this, and it slides left and right. The reason why I'm saying is this: when you set your saw up, take this guide block off. Set it down, set your saw up. After you get your saw set, you can slide this guide block back over and screw it down. That way, every time you use the same saw and you put it back on and butt it up to that guide plate, you won't have to make that sacrificial cut anymore. You'll be right on. So, okay, let's talk about mounting the saw. Some saws are flat across on their front base here, and some have a little lip up. The rigid here has a little bump up in the lip. Now, if they're flat, you're going to want to keep this base plate here. I'll have to show you in the close-up. There is a little ridge here, and this little ridge supports those saws that have a bump up in their lip. If not, you can turn it. You can either turn it to accept that lip, that little bump out, or set it so it's flat. But either way, you can just reverse it around to make this flat. Now, first thing you want to do is take your saw, line your blade up so that it fits inside one of those slots. Now, not just the blade, but you got the blade guard here too. You want to be able to make sure that moves smoothly. So once you fit that in, you can slide the saw into place. I suggest bringing the blade all the way up, that way you're not fighting it. Get into place, takes a little screwdriver is all it takes, and there's 2 screws that you want to loosen up and slide over onto this base, and it's just going to lock it down into place. Very simple. I'm going to find the screw. So you lock them down into place, and then there's 2 adjustable screws that actually press down on the guide. You don't want to over tighten these. Just tighten them enough so they keep them snug, and it keeps the saw from moving around. After that, it's nice and tight. So that's when you have this guide, you can use this on either system. So we know how the rip cut works. Now let's take a look at this Accu-Cut. Now this Accu-Cut kind of works as a track, like a track saw, almost identical. Only difference is you can get track saws in like 108-inch lengths, and that way you can cut a full length of plywood down the center. You can't with this. This is only a 48-inch system, so you can only go across a piece of plywood. And so this is why I say these two need to be used together, because this one will give you the full capacity of a rip down the middle, lengthwise, and this one will give you a full capacity to go anywhere down across the board. So whether you need to cut a 4x8 sheet into a 4x4 section, this is going to be your tool. If you want to take a 4x8 sheet and cut it into 2x8, 2 foot by 8 foot, this is going to be your tool. They both use the same base, and the Accu-Cut, again, very heavy duty track. I did not expect that. Along the side, this blue you see is kind of like a hard rubber plastic. And what I like about that is when you set your saw up, you want to get it as close to this as possible. And I actually ran it so I took a little cut out of it. And when you take a cut out of it, you know, I mean, you're right there. Just nip the edge of it. So when you go to line your saw up, your blade's going to run right on the edge of this. And when you line it up with your marks. Make sure you're on the right side of the mark with your blade. Set it down and run your saw through the track. Now, this Accu-Cut also has, they call this a start block. And it really is the easiest way to get this saw to work. You can leave it off the edge of your product, or your cutting wood. Set your saw into the track, and then it rides right along. So that starting block really does help start your cut off the wood. on the back side of this track, there is rubber strips, and they're not super tacky, but if it helps keep this track affixed to the wood and keep it from moving. Really, all you're doing is you're just pushing this down a track, so there's no need to push it side to side, and I had no problem keeping this down on the wood and not moving. That I thought was going to be the biggest issue. Now, a little hint here. If you're going to be making cuts with either of these units, have your plywood supported underneath. If you don't, you're going to have a bow, you're not going to have contact with this, and you're going to have poor results. I actually use a 1.5 inch piece of styrofoam underneath of it that's also supported. That way I can cut through this wood, completely through, into the styrofoam just a little bit by changing the depth of my saw. Therefore, it's supported the whole way. I know I'm getting a cut through. I'm not going to have a pinching point at the end. And it's just a smart way of doing it. And I just got to find a place to store this when I'm done, because I'm going to use it over and over again. Now, if you're worried about this track moving on you at all, Kreg also sells track clamps. And the way you can use this is you can go on the back side of this track. It's just a T-slot. Set your clamp in there, and on each end you could clamp to the wood. Just keep screwing this down till you have the wood clamped into place, and it's not going to move at all. I didn't find these necessaries with the jobs that I'm doing, but if I ever get into a situation with a real slippery surface, or I'm just unsure about it's got to be a dead-on cut, I'll make sure I use these. So this is like a little accessory that you can buy just to give you a little more reassurance on this track. I've used these specifically. I built some cabinets for a friend in his barn, and I brought the sheet goods in. Very difficult to work with a full piece of plywood on a table saw. It's just, especially for one person, it's really not safe. It's difficult to do. So this way I could set this up in my garage, make my cuts outside, then bring them down and assemble. Super easy, safe. I didn't have a track saw at the time, so this works. This is a very cheap option compared to a track saw. And like I said, I was more than pleased with its performance and surprised at the build quality of these. So if you go ahead and buy two, you're going to have two saw plates too. If you buy each unit, you can mount a saw in there full time and have another one just in case you have another saw. You can dedicate a saw to it. So all in all, very impressed with this. Very affordable system. I know the Accu-Cut's right around 80 bucks. I think the Rip Cut's right around 40, I believe. And for that price, you can't get any track saw. Matter of fact, you can't get any table saw for that price either. So if you're just starting out, you don't have these, you don't feel safe with a table saw, these are great options. So go take a look at the Kreg Accu-Cut and Rip Cut systems, and also take a look at their website and check out, they've got a lot of other options, especially with clamping. Until next time, I'm John from Tools in Action. Talk to you later.
Remember, for more exciting tool action, go to toolsinaction.com.